So, what I'm going to be talking about is we need more help, and our testimonies can help this generation and this generation of women. It's like people are ashamed. Well, we know there's a big gap between the baby boomers and up and the millennials and down. There is a huge gap of understanding and of a respect there. A lot of baby boomers, they feel that this generation, which is my generation of millennials and below, they're disrespectful. They can't take criticism. They can't take correction. They don't listen. And a lot of us millennials and the generation below the millennials, they feel like they're not being heard. They're also being disrespected. They're being judged. They're being condemned, sometimes shunned, which means to be avoided, ignored, or rejected. And they're misunderstood. So there has to be a happy medium between the generations, because there's so much misunderstanding and so much difference that is causing people to leave the church or to not even want to be involved or be involved in church. We need more help. We need to talk about things that are uncomfortable to talk about, because it is, a lot of us are going through or have been through things that have caused us to become depressed. It caused us to become feel like we're alone and unheard, and it has caused a lot of people to just turn away from the church because we are not talking about certain topics that are uncomfortable. Baby boomers come from a generation where, they look at us as children still, because a lot of their children are our age. So they look at us as children, and sometimes they feel like our opinions don't matter and what we say doesn't matter. And they come from a generation where unless you're spoken to, you shouldn't speak to an adult. And they still live in these mind frames, even though you are an adult yourself. But no matter what, you do have to respect your elders. But at the same time, it should be a happy medium where they should be showing the love of God. They should be showing respect towards you. And when you respect somebody, you love somebody. So if you love somebody, you are showing the love of God. But a lot of times that does not come across. They can come across as very judgmental. And that is turning a lot of young people, millennials, and people below us away from the church, because they're feeling judged before you even get to know them. And we just need to come up with a happy medium. Instead of saying to a person, you shouldn't dress like that, understand that that person's mother or that person's grandmother or that person's family members all dressed a certain type of way. So yeah, she dressed like that. She dressed like that because that's all she knows. So instead, you come up with a different approach, another approach of being more kind and teaching her, like, okay, well, you have to change your approach. Instead, you can't wear this and you can't wear that. Try something like, hey, Ronnie, I'm just using me as an example. I see you don't have a lot of church clothes to wear. What size do you wear? And buy them what you feel like they should wear, so that it would be more acceptable for the millennials and younger generation to be more willing to maybe look at how they dress more, instead of telling them, you can't. Nobody wants to hear that. That's like because then they start thinking like, okay, you're not my mom. You know what I'm saying? So you want to come to them out of respect, out of love. And if you got to fast, pray, and talk to God before you would approach a millennial about how they dress, then do that, because you need to come to them correct as well. Just like you would want the respect from them to come to you in a respectable manner. It does work both ways. And I think a lot of the older generation feel like they don't have to, in a way, respect the younger generations. And that's not right, because that's you have to always, at the end of the day, you have to always show love, because God is love. And if you're a Christian, that is what they need to see. They need to see love more than anything. So, and we get so caught up in how somebody dresses that we're not paying attention to the relationship that they have with God. When it all boils down to it, it's the relationship that you have with Christ. Because when you have a good relationship with God, the way you carry yourself will be an importance to you. And God can change you. Other people shouldn't be coming in trying to change you. God is the one who changes us, not people. God changes us, not people. People can be the example, but God is who ultimately changes our mindsets, how we walk, how we talk, how we dress, how we communicate, how we react. God is the one who ultimately changes us, if we allow him to. So, because I have seen, some of the most covered up people be the most nastiest. And it's like, you're not showing the love of God when you act like that. And then I have seen some of the most, tattoos all on their arm. Maybe they have a form-fitting outfit, or something that you would call, well, you're not saved because your dress is not longer than your knees. That's not true. That is not true. It's your relationship that matters. Your relationship with Christ that matters. It's not necessarily how you dress. Yes, you should dress in a conservative way, but at the end of the day, we're worried about the wrong things. We need to be worried about our relationship with Christ, because it'd be the same ones who are telling you, the way that you're dressed is wrong, but then they're the ones who are the most nastiest people. It is about how your relationship with Christ, because your relationship will be out of love when you are close to God. And everything that you do will be out of love. Don't walk in your flesh and turn people away from Christ, because that's what's happening. People are turning away from God because of how you are treating them. They are seeing that the people in the church are not being treating the outsiders right. They're not. And this is not everybody. There are people who show love. There are people who do things the right way, but there are some people who do not. And that's who I'm talking about. So don't get this confused. I'm not trying to bash any church or bash anybody. This is for people who are not showing the love of God, because this is what people need to see. That's what non-believers need to see, and that's what people who are on the fence need to see, and that's what people who are baby saints need to see. They need to see the love of God. They don't need to see hate and judgment and being critical all the time. They don't need to see that. They need to see that God loves us, and he wants us saved. And he wants us to pray and have a relationship with them. But until they get to that point, they need to see good examples. And we're lacking that in the church. And we have to keep it real. We are lacking good examples in the church. And, I was in a church one time. I was visiting a church. And there was a lady that was sitting some rows in front of me. And God had to convict me about this, because I was like, dang, her hair is really bright and it's very distracting. And, I had a lot of thoughts in my head. And, the bishop at the church asked her a question, and she could tell him scriptures and in detail. I mean, she was on point. And as I continued to visit this church, I saw that, my God, it's not about how you look. It's not. And that's, what I grew up in. I grew up in a church. So, how you dress mattered. And I grew up, if you know anything about UPC, I grew up UPC too. So they were really strict about how you dress. And it was a sin if you were showing your knees off or showing your legs. Like, it was no makeup, no nothing. That's a sin. So, and that's not downing anybody. That's just, when you have people coming from the outside in, you cannot bombard them with all that stuff, because that's not what is important. You have to show them love. You have to show them kindness. You have to show them the right way to do things by your examples. And it's up to them if they want to do that. And as they grow their relationship with Christ, God will change them. We can't force a change on people. We're not God. We got to let God do what he does best, and that's change people. So, and God really convicted me, because I really had judging people really bad. And you can get sometimes this discernment of somebody and start judging them, because you can, and God gives us discernment, but we're not to use that and hate that person. And I was hating on some people. I'm not going to lie. I was hating on some people because I was picking up some really bad spirits about them, and I was hating them. You hate the spirit. You don't hate that person. It's a difference. You still got to love that person. You still got to be kind to that person, and you still got to treat that person right. But, when you grow up in a church, sometimes you start carrying that judgmental spirit too, and you start judging people. Like, oh, they ain't saved. Oh, they this and they that and they this. But everybody has their own struggles. We all struggle with something. Something or have been through something that God had to take us through a process to get rid of or delivered from or healed from. So we cannot be so quick to judge people, because that is turning people away from God. And that's the most important thing that I want you guys to understand, is the way we treat people is turning people away from God. We have to show love no matter what. We don't have to agree with their lifestyle. We don't even have to like it, but we still have to respect them and show them love. So, and another thing that we need to work on is, a lot of stuff is so hush in the church. Nobody wants to talk about the stuff that's uncomfortable. But that's the uncomfortable things that we do need to talk about, is what's going to get somebody delivered and healed. Because they need to see that, okay, I'm not the only one who's been through this. Because a lot of times when non-believers, when I talk to non-believers, a lot of times they feel like the church is perfect, and that they don't understand non-believers. They don't understand people in the world. And that's not true. And I believe it's that way because a lot of us are just keeping our testimonies in, and we're not talking about it. But our testimonies is what's going to help bring somebody to Christ. We have to talk about stuff that's uncomfortable. And that's not to relive your past or anything. That's just to say that, I had a past too, and it wasn't always perfect. And I didn't always do things the right way. And sometimes, saying I've been there, done that is not enough. They want to hear, okay, what did you do? Where did you go? What was like your life like? Like, what did you do? Like, they want to relate. So it's so much. So to help these women, so these women are in relationships, and whether they're infidelity relationships or they're in abusive relationships, or they're in relationships with people who are dipping and diving in homosexuality, they need to know that they're not alone, because there are other women dealing with that. And they also need to know that that's not okay. That's not okay. That's not okay. And a lot of these women are being heartbroken. They're being broken. They're being down. They are being feeling like there's no way out, which is causing depression. It's causing even for some people, suicidal thoughts, because they feel like this can't be what God wants. This can't be okay. But nobody is talking about it. Or I shouldn't say nobody, but there's not enough people talking about it. There's not enough people who are speaking out about it, and it is turning people away. So they get divorces, and then they stop going to church, and now you just lost the soul. So it's important that we talk about this stuff more, because people need to hear that, your story. They need to hear that they're not alone, because they feel alone. They feel rejected. They don't feel accepted. So we have to come and we have to talk about these things that are uncomfortable to talk about. We got to win these people back. And we do that with love. We have to have love. We got to take that judgmental spirit out and love on these people. Because love conquers a multitude of sin. It is the love that's going to bring people to Christ. If a young lady opens up, and this is just an example, if a young lady opens up to you about how she was depressed and dealing with low self-esteem, and that's something that you overcame and you were delivered from and healed from, it's not saying I've been there, done that, is not going to help her. She wants to know naturally, what did you do? What did you do to help get yourself out of these situations? Like, I keep going back to the same type of guys. I keep going back to the same type of people. I keep hanging with the same type of friends. Well, naturally, I stopped hanging around those people, because I realized when I got with those people, I started doing some of the same stuff that they were doing. And I couldn't free myself until I got rid of those people. And it hurts and it's hard and you're going to cry sometimes. But it has to be done, because that's your first step naturally to getting delivered and free from certain things. Because, we usually hang around people that are the same sins or things that we're dealing with. If you like sex, you hanging around people who do that. So you gotta take yourself out of that, and you gotta take yourself out of that environment, and you gotta be around people who are living right, and people who want to do better, and people who don't want to live that lifestyle anymore. So naturally, you gotta take yourself out of situations. And then you can start telling them about prayer and getting in the Word and just building a relationship with God. But you have to come to them naturally, and you have to give them examples so that they can see that they're not alone, that somebody can relate to them in a church. So that's just to say we need each other. The baby boomers need us, because one day they will leave this earth. And it will be the millennials and the younger generation taking over. So we have to come together and really help each other. Because there are areas, just because you're 60 years old, doesn't mean that you have all the wisdom and you know everything. And just because you're 20 years old doesn't mean that you don't know nothing. And that's another thing that is a big gap between the generations, is the older generations feel like we don't know nothing. And the younger generations feel like the older generation don't want to hear anything that we have to say. So we have to both be open to discuss things. We have to both generations, the baby boomers and up, and then the millennials and down, we have to be open to discuss things that might be uncomfortable to discuss. We have to be open to these things, because we need each other. And how we're going to get there is, first, we have to be open to talk. We have to be respectful to one another. Just because you're 60 years old doesn't mean that you don't need to respect a 20-year-old. You still have to respect. It says, let me see, Proverbs 18:24, a man that has friends must first show himself friendly. You got to be friendly. And you can't be embarrassed you can't be embarrassed to talk about things. In 2 Timothy 1:8, it says, so don't be embarrassed to speak up for our master or for me. Take your share of suffering for the message along with us. And I think I missed a part. for your masters, his prisoners. Take your share of suffering for the message along with us. And in 1 Peter 3:15 says, but in your heart revere, and that means feel deep respect. So in your heart revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you, to give the reasons for the hope that you have. We have to be able to give reasons why we have hope. Why do you believe in Christ? What made you change? I remember you used to be this way. Now you're totally different. What made you change? We have to be able to give an account to why we live this way. Because they don't want to hear, well, it's the right thing to do, and, I've been in church all my life. What is that telling them? Why did you change? How did you change? And and it says, okay, so I'm going to read that again. 1 Peter 3:15 says, but in your hearts revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you, to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with respect. When you respect somebody, you love them. The root of all of this is love. Why? Because God is love. Love conquers a multitude of sin. Life and death is in the power of your tongue. That's why you have to be careful what you say to people. It's not always what you say, but it's how you say it. And some people say stuff so nasty that it just makes people turned off. Like, I don't want to ever go there again. You have to show love. So that's just some of the things that we need to come together about. It's all about our relationship with God. We have to have a relationship with God to win these people, first of all. We have to show the love of God to win these people. And we have to be open to talk about things that are uncomfortable to talk about. Whether that's your past or whether that's just things that you've noticed throughout the churches, throughout ministry, being in ministry for so long. We have to have these discussions because people are being broken. They're being heartbroken. They're being turned away. They're being stressed out. They're being suicidal because if you can't get love from church, where can you go? We know the world ain't full of love. So if you can't get love from the people who are supposed to be Christians and the people who are supposed to be followers of Christ, where can you go? We got to show love towards one another. We can't be so caught up in how somebody looks, how somebody dresses, to deem them as unsaved, because that's not true. I got saved at 12, but I didn't start living right until the age of 21. And that's not everybody's story, but that's mine. So I got tattoos. So I'm not saved. You know what I'm saying? So that's stuff that's important. Like that, we got to get rid of that. That's religious. We got to get rid of religion mindset. Because you cut your hair, you're not saved. Because your skirt stops above your knees, you're not saved. What? What does that have to do with my relationship with Christ? We are all on all on a different level with our relationship with Christ. We all are. But outsiders don't know that. Only people who've been brought up in church know that, everybody ain't up here and everybody ain't down here. Some people are right here, with their walk with Christ. Some people are still growing. Some people are mature. Some people are not mature. And it doesn't matter what age you are, because you can be 60 years old and be not mature in Christ. You could be 60 years old and only been saved for 2 years, where a 20-year-old been saved since they were 15 and living right. So it's not about the age. It's your relationship with Christ. So that's just some stuff I just wanted to put out there, and it has to be talked about. And we have to do it with love and kindness. And we have to keep God first and keep God in it and be prayerful when we talk to these people, because we're losing folks. And we are losing a lot of millennials. A lot of millennials are turning away from churches because of, well, I don't have those clothes to dress, the par, or, I don't know every rule in every church, and I don't know, what to expect. And it's really turning people off from church. And we got to do better with showing love, because it's the love that's going to win them. Not the judgment, not the, gossip. It's the love. So that's all I got for you guys. If you like it, share it. I don't care. You don't have to share it. You can share it if you want to, but that's all I have. You just have to love one another, because that's what it's about. All right. Bye. Love you guys.